Is pervasive misogyny a myth?
I have claimed that it is. Yeah, I think I don't want to say it was necessarily always a myth. Just before we got on here, I was talking about how I was treated in Cairo
Yeah,
by
tell
a
that
couple.
story.
I was just at the airport and I was getting onto an elevator. I was there first. I hit the button. I started to step on, and these two guys walk up and they're like, "No, no." And they waved to me to get off. And then I got off and they got on and they went up and I had to take the next one. Um, so that kind of thing exists in places in the world still in 2023. But in the US, you're not getting much of that anymore. And in fact, you're getting quite a bit of the opposite. So I wrote this paper. I think this a Quillette article, I think. Yeah. A year or two ago, that reviewed a lot of the recent research on looking at gender biases in psychology. And a lot of the time you see exactly the opposite. So people are biased in favor of women across a lot of different domains. They often treat women better than men. They like women better than they like men. Women get punished less than men for the same things. When there's a scientific finding that portrays men better than women, people are biased against it in relation to scientific evidence that portrays women better than men. So people want women to be better than men. And so this idea that society is sexist against women and we have to be vigilant about potential harm to women, I think potentially actually stems from the very fact that we care so much more about women than we do about men. And when we discover these biases against men, no one really cares and they don't make the headlines. So yeah, I would say it is largely a myth in modern Western societies, yes.
Is it really possible to answer this question about whether society is more biased against men than women?
That's a good question. And I would say probably no. Like practically, it would be really hard to measure all of the different contexts where people potentially could be biased. So like some scholars have looked at potential bias against men and women in academia, and they see, for example, it's possible students are slightly biased against women in their teaching evaluations, although hard to know because a lot of these are real evaluations. So it could just be that maybe women aren't as nice teachers. I don't know. So people have tried to like look at which domains do people have a bias against women or against men. It would be hard to look at everything all at once and say which direction. But one thing that's been happening that I've seen across a few papers now, including one of my own papers that's coming out, is that a lot of these biases actually used to favor men. Like, for example, in hiring for male stereotypical jobs, it really was the case that people used to be discriminating against women in those jobs. And a lot of these things seem to have flipped around 2009. So a lot of the biases that used to favor men now favor women. And a lot of the biases that always favor women still favor women. So I do think, I don't know if we can say on whole who gets treated worse relative to the other gender. But certainly it seems to be the trajectory that biases are increasingly in favoring women. And then people just don't seem to care as much about that as when they seem to go against women.
There was that Stuart Williams study about fake articles favoring women or men and people's judgments of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had one on, I think it was men or women lie more, maybe. And then they did men or women are more intelligent, or men and women are better drawers. I think there were like 3 domains. And yeah, they always found that when the evidence said that women have a worse quality than men, people are like, this is sexist, this is bad research. But when women are portrayed as better, people are like, oh, it's even pretty good.
And that was the same as when it was equal, right? So women are better and men and women are equal was seen as a similar level, I think.
So I have studies where I've looked at something very similar that I have struggled to publish for like 7 years, where we did that. We had I think we did it with intelligence. Men or women are equally intelligent. Women are more intelligent than men, or men are more intelligent than women. And people like the men and women are equally intelligent, or women are more intelligent than men more than they like men are more intelligent than women. So that's the one that really irritates people.
Yeah. Why do you think this is the case? Like, why is it? Well, actually, first, no. why do mainstream narratives focus so much on the possibility of anti-female biases if it seems, pretty robust that men even have an anti-men bias?
They do,
the call is coming from inside the house with regards to some of the sort of anti-male sentiments.
Yeah, so like both men and women will show this pro-female bias. It is larger for females usually, but men too have these pro-women bias. What was your question? Why do
mainstream narratives focus on it so much?
Yeah, I think it's potentially just because we care more about. So there are two things going on, I think. And one I think has been sort of forwarded as the explanation, but I think it might be a little bit simplistic. So just the idea that men and women, women have more like value essentially from an evolutionary perspective. If you have 100 women and one man, you could have 100 babies. But if you have one
very
woman,
happy man, one incredibly
very happy man.
Yeah.
If you have one woman and 100 men, you gotta have one.
You have a very disgusting woman.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So women are the sort of limited resource, and so scholars have argued, and it seems to be very plausible that we care more about harm to women because they are essentially setting the limit on our success as a species. So that's one piece of it. The reason that I don't think that's necessarily all of it is what we briefly touched on at the start of this conversation, which is that you do see these big cross-cultural differences and you do see these big differences over time. So if I were to run this study where, say, like men are smarter than women or women are smarter than men in like 1920, would I see the same thing? I highly doubt it. So I don't think that's all of it. I think that's part of it. And then on top of it, we have this sort of cultural narrative that, women have been disadvantaged for X amount of time. And that is a huge problem. And now the corrective measures have gone so far that they've fully reversed things. And a lot of time men are being disadvantaged for the sake of women. So I think those are both what's happening. So you see that in society when you get any of these effects where you're like, look, people are sexist against women. Everyone loves it, goes viral. It's covered by the New York Times. I don't think anybody will be, well, I don't want to say anybody, but I don't know if Stuart Williams' findings are going to make it to the front page of the New York Times. I guess we'll see.
Are you familiar with gamma bias? Have you learned about this?
I don't know. No, I don't think so.
So this is Dr. John Barry from the Center for Male Psychology. This is a concept that he at least has popularized. I don't know whether he was the one that came up with it. And it basically talks about how, especially in popular news media articles, if the article is pro-women, then they will sex the headline. If it's anti-men, then it will sex the headline. But if it's the reverse, it will be gender neutral. So basically the successes of women and the failings of men both end up getting. So like white male shooter would be put as the headline for something, or like female CEO would be put as the headline for something, but the reverse isn't necessarily true. It seems to be less true. And this causes a skew in the way that people see the world. More people are spending time inside rather than outside now, which means that their genuine day-to-day experience of the world is limited. So most of them live their life vicariously through the news stories that they read and the social media that they follow, which means that this very much is shaping our experience of the world. I think Q1 2023 saw the highest ever number of female CEOs in history happen. It was over a third of all CEOs were women. Remembering that this isn't just like, finally women have got the opportunity to do this. This is like, finally we have found enough women that want to become CEOs. For all that it sounds great and like 50-50 represent it. The reality on the ground probably sucks a lot more dick than you think.
Every single morning for over 3 years now, I've started my day the exact same way, which is with Element in water. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium, and it is the best hydration drink that I've ever found. It tastes fantastic, it's super refreshing. Orange is just the most OP flavor in the world. It's absolutely phenomenal, and it helps to play a critical role in reducing muscle cramps and fatigue. It regulates your appetite, it optimizes brain health, and it helps curb cravings. They're also the exclusive hydration partner to Team USA weightlifting and relied on by tons of Olympic athletes and everyday high performers all around the world. Also, there is a no BS, no questions asked refund policy where you can buy a box completely risk-free, and if you do not like it for any reason, they will give you a refund during an unlimited duration, and you don't even need to return the box. That's how confident they are that you'll love it. Element are giving away a free sample pack of all 8 flavors with your first box if you go to the link in the description box below, or drinklmnt.com/MW. That's drinklmnt.com/MW. What's happening, people? If you enjoyed that, then press here for the full, unedited episode. And don't forget to subscribe.